Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. What's happening? Benton here. Rolling out of the motel. Yeah, I've been staying in a motel in California. So I'm paying. I'm paying a little more than I'm historically been willing to pay. Yeah, we're headed to go walk around the Royal We, of course. Headed to go walk around LA. What else is there to do? So bear with me. While we get on to the freeway, it's still early enough. The traffic's not bad. Solipsistically. Yep. If people pay attention to the ideas in these live streams, I do mention solipsism quite a bit. At some point, I guess I'll go back and study up on exactly what that's supposed to mean philosophically. Hang on, we're in a slowdown already. It's funny, I've been going this way every morning about this time, and just like listening to content or whatever I'm doing, I don't remember getting interrupted. Of course, I wasn't focused either. It's like, damn, what do I have to go through just to get up to speed and be able to talk, right? Trucks, big trucks everywhere. Once I get out of this group of trucks, it should be smooth sailing. Apologies. Shout out to the chat. If there's anybody here, shout out to the replay crew. If that's still a thing. I'm just going to get in slow lane and go 50 behind some of these trucks. But yeah, back to solipsism. And I pretty well had my mind made up. And again, as an open-minded thinking person evolving, ideas evolving over time, I'm not going to fully lock myself into certain viewpoints. But solipsism works for me because a lot of what I've been talking about on here lately, it really only even potentially the actual ideas only really start to maybe break down slightly, when applied to other people, right? Other people's experiences, whataboutisms, uh, other folks' viewpoints, them wanting to put their head in the sand, other people having a hope station. It's like, yes, contained within each human apparently is a hope station. I also have one. So what? What does that have to do with the price of dread and dystopia? So I want to make it clear, and not that it will ever be clear, but as far as the audience is concerned, and I am part of the audience as well, I would like to mention um, that more and more I'm seeing no benefit to applying these ideas to any being other than myself, right? Specifically, So like a who, what, where, and a why. So the who is me, right? The where is inside my sphere of influence. And see, I can already hear, you know, the mind's working and the knee-jerk reactions of, okay, but why go live onto the internet and talk about the ideas? Well, fair point. Fair point. I am a person who, for whatever reason, is able to benefit from speaking out loud, even if there's not necessarily an audience for it, because I'm also representative of the audience. So there's never not an audience. And then in the greater context, I've been speaking on also the notion of this life, again, solipsistically, speaking only from my own viewpoint, solipsistically. I know that I'm delivering some sort of a performance, you know, uh, before who or what or where. I'm not, I don't necessarily know. Again, it's all going to get tied back to waking dreams, surrealism, unreality. I'm, in my opinion, it's a horrible failure of critical thinking and logic to start with the notion of this realm, this delusory adversarial realm of business, that it's valid simply because it exists, it seemingly exists and is happening, if that makes sense. The mere fact that that seems to be the case, again, and I hesitate to even say the word we, but solipsistically, is that even possible? What I'm talking about here. This is this is an astonishing level of slow driving contest that I could have never foreseen. Hold on just a moment. This is shocking what I just witnessed. And it's almost like I can go 50 or I can go 80. And it's almost impossible to do anything in between. And this is bizarre. To further enforce the unreality and the surrealism and the waking dream aspect. And I think another attraction, another appeal of solipsism to me personally is just this idea of a we, because if there's a group of humans collectively, and the collective output is this world day to day, this delusory adversarial realm of business, I don't want anything to do with that we. So is solipsism merely a code? I'm certainly willing to entertain that notion. And at the end of the day, does it even matter? What isn't a code? As soon as someone, someone lays back in the cut and is observing a conversation and then pounces on a statement and says that's a cope or that sounds like a cope. All right, well, that's fine. Now I have a tool or a cudgel to apply to all statements. And at a certain point, extrapolating out far enough, my conclusion is, well, it seems like almost everything everyone does, in fact, can be boiled down to a cope. So what is the relevance of laying back in the cut and pouncing on an isolated statement? Oh, well, that sounds like a cope. Well, does it, or is it one of a never-ending series of copes known as this life? But this particular cope, the other person finds inconvenient to whatever they're trying to do, whatever they're on about. So are they selectively applying? Oh, well, that's a cope, or that sounds like a cope. Right? Like, by definition, what isn't a cope? Uh, how much of one's day is involved in just doing whatever the person, feels drawn to do, again, of its own merits, not because, well, the laundry's going to need to get done later today. And then, I got to go over here and run this errand. And then, I got out of work at this time, and, payday's next Thursday, and, all of the mundanities of life, right? So how much of the day is not a cope that's involved in uh, managing all of those affairs, which brings me back to the Fight Club notion. And I'm not putting up Fight Club as something to follow. I'm taking a piece of the larger concept of Fight Club. A lot of people are confused when this happens. I've come to find out. Uh, and many people have a very low capacity for abstraction. And it's also a very human thing. Psychologically, the system gets a lot of mileage out of individuals relating personally to any and all phenomenon or phenomena that occurs. So, such as, Benton mentions a movie called Fight Club, and it's difficult. I've observed it's difficult for many people to move on until they have paused long enough to personally relate to the concept of a film known as Fight Club. Whereas for whatever reason, I've never had that wiring. That's just simply something that does not exist for me, and probably enables my very high capacity for abstraction. So I can go directly to the concept from the movie Fight Club, which is to let that which does not matter truly slide. And I can go right to that concept and abstractly remove it from the larger Fight Club concept without needing to spend any time whatsoever personally relating to the phenomenon of a movie called Fight Club. Right. And this is a superiority. However, as we've noted, the idea that a greatest strength is a greatest weakness, and all of this, in a realm of seeming duality, right? And am I hallucinating, or did at one point in human history was it possible to get onto a 5-lane freeway and just stay in a lane and more or less just get to where we're going because there's not really traffic? That no longer seems to be possible. I mean, it really just no longer seems possible. My speeds have been between 40 and 75 so far. Like, this is just complete insanity. I really don't. I don't understand what this is. It's just, again, I just does not seem to be the way things used to be in the past. Very strange. My apologies. I'm hoping to maybe settle in to a lane where I can just stubbornly be an asshole. And of course, it won't even really be being an asshole. These people are out of it, man. Just they gone and they ain't coming back. Right. So anyway, back to the idea of letting that which does not matter truly slide. More and more, I'm losing interest in doing much of anything. However, that can never be laziness, right? What I mean is, I'm just losing interest at all in even doing many tasks. Like slowly but surely, I'm whittling all of my possessions down to whatever fits into a used to be a large size hiking backpack. Now it's more of like a medium sized hiking backpack. And now it's a traffic jam because everybody's looking at their phones. Hang on, at least Actually, this might be a wreck. Yeah, this is way worse than normal, whatever this is. This slowdown. Well, it's Los Angeles. It's morning times. And I did leave a little later than normal between having difficulty finding the motivation to pack my gear and then taking about 10 minutes setting up the stream before I drove away. So who knows? Maybe that 15 minutes makes all the difference. Who the hell knows? Couldn't tell you. Not sure I care at this point. But yeah, so packing all my gear, into that, not everything doesn't fit in there, but packing what's currently, trying to be the pack out or whatever they call this. What eventually when it's just me on foot, and that's not going to be too much longer, I suspect. Although who knows? But this morning, I'm just like, man, why do I even need this stuff? And yeah, it's all useful items, and of course, a lot of it's clothing. It's like, yeah, we probably do need these two, wool blankets or whatever. But I'm getting real close to just like, who the fuck cares, man? Uh, yeah, does street level homelessness suck in certain ways? Yeah, it does. It also doesn't suck at all in other ways. Uh, one of which is just the mental fucking, can be like just the mental overload. The just whatever that mental, yes, correct, mental resourcing is around just keeping track of all of these items. Do I have the proper items in the proper place for what I'm about to go do? And this is also a lot of, I understand the attraction to people living in an apartment or a house. It's that sort of everything has its place. Yeah, I understand all of that, but everybody who actually leaves their home has some version of this, certainly, what I'm speaking on. Yeah, let's just slam our brakes on, folks. Of course, part of that was I was looking down to make sure I was still live, and then I look up and it's like, oh, they're also slamming their brakes on. Great. So, in a proper society, what would be the number one mission of every driver on the road during a backup and a slowdown? It would be to maintain enough distance from all the other vehicles that no matter what happens, none of us ever comes to a full and complete stop. Because in a backup, if one car in one lane stops, every single car behind that car in that same lane will come to a full and complete stop unless someone like me figures out what is happening and intentionally maneuvers my vehicle speed to make it to where if people behind me are paying attention, eventually nobody will have to stop. And in fact, apparently a science has proved that this is actually a thing. Did a study and proved that this is a thing. But of course, the human being's emotions are set up to do what? Oh, we got to get ahead. We got to rush to the front. We got to get out of this. Well, that's exactly what makes the backup take way longer, is that everybody wants to rush to the front. In fact, the way that everybody gets past a certain point up ahead, the fastest on average is we all slow the fuck down. We all leave enough space. We all let people over when they need to get over. We all, do what we can to keep rolling. That's what gets everybody past a certain point fast. See, humans are just not set up for that. Now, is that the psychology, designed and installed via Moloch's machine? Is that human nature? I'm not exactly sure. Is it a combination? Perhaps. And this is why, again, back solipsism works for me because I'm never, ever, ever going to go back to even for one moment considering the possibility of a proper functioning society. It's simply, number one, has never happened. Or if it has, it's been through brute force and just overt, like, goons making, forcing it. Right. So really what I'm talking about is left to their own devices of their own volition, because of a social contract. Humans have absolutely never ever had functioning proper societies in the way that humans, especially in America, seem to have been indoctrinated to believe that that's even a thing at all. And in fact, most Americans, who will, potentially bemoan certain problems and struggles, will more or less agree that, well, yeah, it's a proper functioning society, America. Absolutely not. And the fact that there's other societies that people can point to and say, well, maybe it's better in some way than these other societies. Well, and as we know now, well, there's also places I can point to that are way better than America in a given metric. So, like, what's the fucking difference here? And then just look at the built-in aggression in driving. It's a lot of people who are rushing to a job that they don't want to go to in the first place, and they don't want to get tickets. And this is California. Tickets are way more expensive than most other states. I mean, like, what might be $150 speeding ticket where you live is $500 here, like, for real, like, no bullshit. And so a lot of people, they want to haul maximum ass everywhere, but they only ever want to be behind other cars while they do it. So my experience of driving a lot of times is just, I'm in a lane and there's not really traffic, and I look in my mirror and it's just a never ending series of people on my tail trying to get me to speed up so that they can speed behind me, right? And that says a lot about the person. Now, so you want me to, and not you, the listener, the royal you. So one wants me to accept that these are the people who are willing to behave as if they have my best interests at heart. They want a proper society so that me and my potential family can have access to jobs and education and a place to live. That's nonsense. None of these people give a flying fuck about anybody but themselves. I mean, can we face that reality? Now, and not in the royal we, there is no, practically speaking, there's no we there. So is it okay to just remove the taboo and say, yes, generally speaking, every motherfucker out here only cares about themselves? Now, part of caring about themselves is they are incentivized and de-incentivized. So some of the behaviors will appear as if they not only do they care about others, they care way more than the average about other people, which I'm here to tell you says absolutely nothing about what's going on at their true intention. Deep inside themselves, truly in their hearts, they are only concerned with themselves. And as I'm trying to get into lanes, it's other cars are immediately like, oh, is this our breakout chaser? Is this who we chase in the breakout? Immediately, cars are falling into line behind me like, oh, is this the guy who's going to go 85? We're all going to chase him. No, it's not. I'm just trying to get into a lane so I can continue my conversation and my discourse here. But immediately as I moved over into that lane, two cars immediately tucked in behind. Oh, maybe this is our guy who's going to aggressively try to pull his way through all of this. So hopefully he'll get the ticket if the CHP's up ahead. So that's chicken shit. And, for better or for worse, and I would like to think a lot of how I was raised was consistent with, my own true spirit of what I know myself to be at the level of true knowledge of self, right? I can't honor that. That's chicken shit. What we hang out in a pack and we want to get ahead and we want to go faster, but we're too chicken shit. So we hang back and one person comes by slightly faster and we hopefully tuck in behind them. Oh, maybe this is the one who's going to haul balls and lead us to the promised land. No, it's not. I'm out here. I know I'm only doing for myself out here, right? I'm not dumb enough And I have no need. I would prefer to just go fucking 60. It's almost impossible to just get in a lane and go 60. Right. And a big part of that is somebody's going to immediately dive bomb uh, the ass into this car because most people, when tailgated, most people speed up. That's also something about human nature. Not me. I just start staring in my mirror like, why is this person on my ass? And then I wait long enough. And if they don't get the message, I slow down a mile an hour or two. And then almost always out here, what happens is as soon as I cancel the cruise control and slow down half a mile an hour, they peel off because they realize, okay, he's not going to speed up because we're tailgating. This is humanity. Humanity is where the majority of people, when they drive an automobile, they intentionally find a slower moving car to tailgate because experiences have taught them that more often than not, this person will then speed up. And if tickets are going to be handed out down the road, that they will be more likely to get handed the ticket. Like, this is your proper society. And I don't mean you, the listener. See, I'm just not insane enough to allow the other, again, solipsistically, if these are even actually other humans in the way that I'm a human, but whoever these people are, even some of whom attempted to LARP as my own personal friends, right? I will not let them gaslight me into internalizing, well, yeah, but must just be something wrong with old Benton. Because if old Benton would just get with the program, it'd be a proper functioning society. And that is, and I realize I'm getting a little irritated, so let me calm down. Improperly identified. Something about that goofy voice. And I suspect as I manage all of these spiritual practices in real time, even as I do the broadcast, I suspect some of that is some repressed trauma and something that I repressed in the past, some energy form, realizing, oh, wait a minute, here we can make our escape, right? Which is, in the long run, that's better. But at a certain point, I'm calling it. At a certain point, it's just like, hey, man, for all I know, this repressed trauma is effectively never ending. So it's like, yeah, I've actively unrepressed as much of it as possible. And that I'm getting very close to that point also. See, I'm just unwilling. I'm not willing to be sold a bill of goods around the possibility of a proper functioning society. And this is where politics shows itself to be so useful, right? This is where politics shows itself to, hang on, now we got a lane ending. So we got a maniac trucker trying to go 70, but then we have another maniac trucker, and he's a maniac because he's actually going somewhere near the state speed limit of 55 miles an hour for trucks. So we got one truck in the a lane he's not legal in, even trying to pass me, even though I'm damn near going 70, and that was causing an unsafe situation because I was about to get sandwiched up against a truck who's actually driving properly. Oh, but remember, folks, be safe. Isn't that what we all say to each other now, post pandemic, when we part? Be safe. Oh yeah, I'm about to go get in a tin can of an automobile and get onto an interstate, and I'm about to watch people do anything but. But yeah, be safe. Hilka, hilka. Woo! Laugh or cry at this point. I mean, for reals. Like, what even is this? Oh, and that shows you what I am. What I am is one with the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit that finds itself in a delusory, adversarial realm of business. That's what this is. An adversarial meaning I'm the adversary. What I am, what my essence, what I represent in this realm, my true essence, what that represents in this realm, that is considered adversarial by the realm itself. Just by waking up, drawing breath, getting up, and going about my day in this dystopian nightmare, I am viewed as an adversary. Oh, is Walmart open? Hell, no. See, 20 more minutes. I'm passing Walmart. You know, an Arkansas boy knows where the motherfucking Walmarts are, even in Los Angeles. So I don't know that I don't believe there's any proper Walmarts in the city limits, but I might be wrong on that. That one's in Burbank, the one we're passing right now. As much as I don't like to fight the crowds, I've been popping in there on my way back every evening. I could sit in the parking lot for 30 minutes. Actually, since I'm live streaming, probably should have. Either way. Oh, and if anybody's curious, I'm really only even doing this stream because at some point today, my StreamYard subscription goes away. And the free version doesn't last me very long, as we know. And I don't know that I'm going to break off another $45 of my money. I'm pretty sure Dono's covered the last 2 months. I'm pretty sure I got at least $90 in Dono for the last 2 months. And I'm not even soliciting donations. But if anybody hears this and wants to send me $45, I will immediately pay for the StreamYard for a month of StreamYard. So, but either way, I mean, I'm good. So, again, solipsistically. So this is what I mean by the ideas that I'm espousing. They only begin to break down when I turn them over to other people, and other people get to say, well, what about this? What about that? And they're always doing that through an externalization, through an improperly applying internalization versus externalization, and then erroneously pushing things into a collective. It's like, yeah, but I'm speaking in very specific contexts. I'm speaking internally to myself specifically much of the time. And then I'm specifically saying, oh, well, any collective endeavor, that's dead. That's failure. If it's a collective effort, I already know the outcome. The outcome is corruption, death, destruction, and all things evil and demonic. Humans cannot come together, folks, at least not in their present unevolved form. Humans lack the capability of coming together and creating and operating collective systems that result in anything other than corruption, depravity, and evil on Front Street. Evil on Front Street. And that's what business and finance is. It's so on Front Street. Right before I did this live stream, I'm listening to a video on my channel, and they're talking about this Klarna and all this buy now, pay later, or whatever I don't even know what it's called, but all of this, break it up into 4 payments type shit, and it's all claimed as no interest, which is, I guess, technically true. It does turn out to be quite a diabolical business model. Of course it is. It's going to be one of the most successful. It has to be one of the most diabolical in this delusory adversarial realm of business. And I would say business itself is antithetical to what I am. Now, I don't mean the Guatemalan ladies that I pass on the sidewalk, with a table set up selling tortas or whatever they're selling. It's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about business in America, right? Which has a very specific nature, right? Very specific. And it's a bunch of small businesses trying to grow into a decent sized corporation to either get bought out so that the founders can retire and the investors, or to maybe take a run at becoming one of the gigantic corporations. I do need to pay a little bit of attention, or I'll end up passing up my exit here. We don't want that. But to finish up a little bit, I can, as I observe my own discourse and I'm able to critique and pick apart my own discourse in my own head in real time. Now, again, maybe I'm just some fucking genius and I'm able to do a thing that other people aren't able to do. I don't know, right? I have no fucking idea. I know people just assume because they identify me as intelligent in some ways that there's certain things that they can do that I can also do. And I'm like, well, actually, I can't even visualize. So I don't know what you're talking. They're like, what? It's like, yeah, I don't see anything in my mind's eye. There's nothing there. So, maybe other people aren't able to do what I'm describing. I have no fucking idea. It comes fairly easily to me for whatever reason. So what I see is that all of these ideas are 100% logically sound, meaning undebunkable. Undebunkable, right? Meaning some provable validity. Now, what I mean by, yeah, various aspects can be attacked and undermined. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, it's not possible to negate the entire validity of all of the ideas. That's what I'm talking about. You can't, it's not possible to invalidate enough of my assertions to just say, okay, well, actually, none of this is even, it's a house of cards. It's not even a house of cards at that point, right? So the cracks don't even really begin to show until it's turned over to the public or to the masses and to let them put their stink on it. And well, what about this? What about that? It's like, I don't know. I'm a solipsist at this point. It's every man for himself. What do you mean? What about the fact that you've taken my idea and I said that idea in a specific internal context, and now you're turning it into a different context externally and applying it to a collective. Like, what's that got to do with what I'm talking about? Right? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. That's two different. Those are the same idea in two different contexts. Which, guess what? Might as well be two different ideas, folks. And this is where I'm way motherfucking smarter than most people. This is where I'm way smarter than a lot of smart people. Is this almost religious fanaticism around maintaining my focus and concentration around every little part of every little idea must always be in its proper place. And the moment somebody takes one little piece of one of my little ideas and tries to put it into a different context, I notice it immediately and go, aha, you've changed the meaning. You removed my context. That's no longer what I said, folks. Right. So I know everything I'm saying here holds water. Where does it hold water? Inside of my own sphere of influence, which, hey, uh, you're in luck, Benton, because if it is solipsism, that's the only place it fucking matters in the first place. Or in the final analysis, that's the only place it really fucking matters, sir. Normally I stop up here and get fuel. I think we'll skip that this morning. I can get it on the way back if I remember. Now, merging onto Glendale Boulevard in the city limits of Los Angeles, just south of what's known as Silver Lake. And anybody's curious, and this is technically Echo Park, I believe, which is like more or less like a neighborhood, I suppose. An unincorporated area, is that what they call that? I don't think it's technically an unincorporated. It's incorporated. It doesn't even matter. Most of you ain't city folks, don't know what the fuck I'm talking about anyway. And I remember when I was going to truck driving school, working at the airport in Austin, staying at the Salvation Army, there was a native New Yorker there that talked a lot like that Joshua Block. This guy was probably also autistic. He talked a lot like that Joshua Block World T-shirts character, the "I'm the King of New York" fella, and he called where the the Skid Row area where the Salvation Army, there's another shelter there, and there's a bunch of services. He called it the shelter district, which I always got a kick out of that, and calling that the shelter district. Because it was accurate. It's just, this isn't Manhattan or New York City. So based on the size of Austin, it doesn't quite work, but I found it amusing. And, novelty, if anybody's ever listened to a certain content creator in the space who's discoursed a great deal on novelty in the past. See, that's novelty. And this is an interesting, whatever I mean when I say this life, it's a series. It has been and most likely will continue to be an interesting series of novel experiences if I choose to conduct myself that way, right? And see, here's Benton doing the right thing, potentially, although it wasn't necessary in this case, potentially yielding to a pedestrian, a jogger, no less. Now, what is today? We got street sweeper action. We don't get tickets. We don't get parking tickets. So, well, I don't even know what it's today. Thursday. Yeah. So I see none of this. I can't park here because when noontime comes around, it'll be ticket time. Although hell, sometimes I'm gone by noon. Now that I think about it. Anyway, bear with me just one moment. I'm pretty sure I know where we're going to end up parking. But... Oh, there's a fellow that would not accept my $5 the other day. Although I kind of came at him in a funny. I had kind of I don't know, my attitude, the way I approached him was a little off-putting, perhaps from his perspective. Although probably not enough to refuse the $5 if he was otherwise inclined to accept it. I always manage to get to this light right when I have to haul maximum ass or I'm going to get caught at the light. Funny how that works. Oh, shit. Man, that was almost a spot I would want to park at. I didn't see it fast enough. Thank you for your patience. All right. Almost there. Trying to let these cars know I'm finna try to park. Suck too far up my ass. Oh yeah, we're good. We're gold. Trying to park based on where I remember the shade's going to be later. All right. Okay, we're parked. Shout out to the chat. I have not read the comments thus far, so I'll try to continue. Well, I will continue on, I should say. And have you ever asked yourselves the question, why, what's the reason why society, especially American society, has to be based on business? Because it has to be. There's clearly no other alternatives. And I don't mean capitalism versus communism. That's not what I'm talking about. Communism obviously operates on the principles of business. Right. Uh, I had to pause. There were some junkies passing by very slowly on the sidewalk, and you never know. There's always the possibility of my loud ass voice drawing their attention. Yeah. Anyway, so again, back to the solipsism, I can absolutely answer the question, why does America have to be first and foremost? Why does it have to be based on business? Because that's how antithesis is choosing to oppose what I am, is a system of business. So thus solipsistically proving, this is proof, folks, thus solipsistically proving to the only being that fucking matters, let's just call it what it is, which is me. I mean, is that really so bad to say, uh in a given context, in a specific context, I'm the only motherfucker here that matters? I mean, for real, is that really so bad to just, yeah, I from a certain way of looking at things, I'm the only being that really truly matters here. Oh, but remember, society and psychology and Moloch's machine, and it's all set up to where, well, a person can't express that or they lose face, right? The idea of a loss of reputation. Well, except it's pretty much a post-reputation society. I don't know if y'all have noticed that. You know, that's not really a thing like it used to be. Reputation. So all that society can do is, if I'm willing to just flatly state what I just stated, all it can really do is try to attack me, right? And make me feel some type of way. But see, because I know what I am, right? True knowledge of self, I can never again be made to feel some type of way and also be properly identified. See? Because if I can be made to feel some type of way within this delusory adversarial realm of business, that means I have committed what is perhaps the only actual sin from my perspective. I've temporarily had committed the sin. And this is where supposedly they say, well, sin means to miss the mark. Well, if the mark I'm aiming at is to always in each new moment be properly identified within myself with my own nature, which is one with the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit. So if the only time, if the my only possibility of ever being in error is when I'm not identified actively, and the way that this is all set up is that the default, again, at least for me, and it seems to be the case for other humans, but I default to uh, identifying strongly with a delusory adversarial realm of business that has it out for me, but not in a targeted individual type of way. It has it out for me based on what? Not my characteristics, not my vocal tone, not my high levels of testosterone, and that's the surest sign of a physical. I don't even want to get into that right now, but that's not always a good thing. Mm. The way my face looks, the color of my eyes, where I hail from, what I used to do for a living, all of these, my political stuff, right? Now, those are all characteristics. Now, I'm talking about what I am at my core essence and what that represents to the antithesis of what I am. That's what's relevant here. That's what has validity here. So while simultaneously the so-called truth community, many of them will attempt to gaslight and cajole me back into doing what they are doing, which is strongly identifying with this experience this realm, the delusory adversarial realm of business, guess what? I was right there with you, as recent as 3 months ago, except I just wasn't doing it probably as frequently. It was like, yeah, I was able to identify with something other than, you know, what was going on in the realm. But, what that was represented more of a fake it till you make it. And it was just like, okay, well, I'll just sort of whittle my time away with all of these various practices that are, leveling me up. But it's all small level ups. And then, years ago had the big level up of the direct experience of Christ consciousness, and then the recent even bigger level up of true knowledge of self, right? And it's not a arrogance, although of course, how could the most super intelligent force of love and all of this possible at the highest levels, does that sound humble? What part of that, what of that sounds like humility, right? Now I think we get into reputation and putting on of airs, right? Because I got to think there's a certain level of arrogance just baked into that cake. There would have to be, or what at least would play as arrogance. And to some people, anything that falls one iota short of false modesty ends up playing as arrogance. And then that's usually a problem. And I've noticed those type of people usually have their own problems around self-esteem, and for whatever reason they seem to lack something inside. See, I've had a lot of social anxiety as a young person. I had, you know, certain issues with how I viewed myself in certain ways, but I also at all times was doing activities and things that gave me a valid reason to have a lot of confidence, and to be gregarious and aggressive, and a lot of that was cultural where I'm from, but at that time also, and it was a hyper masculine environment. It was a hyper masculine culture also. But I don't want to digress too far. Hang on, let me see what we got going on here. Shout out to the chat. Appreciate y'all being here. Like I said, I don't need the money, but if $45 in donos shows up, I'll pay for another month of StreamYard. Otherwise, I might still do it anyway. I mean, who knows? But before I said I wouldn't, and I did anyway. But I'm pretty sure over the last 2 months, the donations probably totaled $90 or close enough. And look, if it was still $25, I would just pay for it. It's part of this is just I think StreamYard's out of their fucking minds wanting $45 a month. But that's the system of business, right? If they can get it, that's what they're supposed to charge. It's predatory, right? And imagine an entire predatory system, right? A delusory adversarial realm of predatory business. That's what this place is, man. And so back to what I asked moments ago, have you ever asked yourself, why does society have to be based entirely on business? And it is entirely based on business. Now, I understand that folks will reject that out of hand, and they will try to find all the reasons why that can't possibly be true. Oh, it's true. There's nothing in this country that doesn't operate as a business. And people say, well, I don't operate as a business. Sure you do. Sure you do. Absolutely, you operate as a business. Are you crazy? You just may not be aware of it. And that's part of the SOV citizen stuff. That's part of the reason why the driver's license stuff, doesn't fully ever carry the day, is because most of your car trips, almost 100% of your car trips are for commerce. I'm driving to the store. Oh, but I'm not engaged in commerce. You're driving to the motherfucking store to buy shit. What are you talking about? Like, this is how, and again, my apologies, not you, the listener, but let me calm back down. And I'm seeing now that now I'm laughing at myself, because it's like, why does this even bother you, sir? It's like, you're right. Why does this even bother? At this point, my own patterns. Apparently, Talcott talks about patterns a lot now. Jack Talcott, if anybody knows who that is, if that's a real person, talks about patterns a lot. I can see now some of this is just coming down to some of these patterns are now obsolete. And it's just like it's like old man yells at cloud, right? It's like, why am I even mad at this? Holy. Is this even worthy of my anger? You know. And my latest spiritual practice is I wake up in the morning and to varying degrees, I become concerned with the amount of money I've been spending since I quit my job. Like a drunken sailor. Well, my version of a drunken sailor, because I am quite frugal if people don't know that about me. In fact, at a certain point, I recognized when after spending so many years living in the streets with almost nothing and always being able to come up with enough money for something that I needed. But most of the time, if I wanted something, it was simply out of reach. And I lived that way for years. So when I started getting my truck driving checks, I found that I more or less just had to make myself buy shit. So I would be in Walmart and, knowing I needed to go rush out to my truck, or not really rush out to my truck, but I was incentivized to sort of keep run into the store, get what I got to get and get out of there so I can get back on the road, you know. So at a certain point, it was like I recognized, like, oh, I need to just whatever I think I'm going to need. I'm here. It's here. I've got the money. The concern at this point is not what do the things cost and how much money and what's the budget. Now the factor is, am I going to use this? Yes or no? And if so, throw it in the motherfucking basket, right? And I found that initially it really was a good exercise. I had to sort of force myself to do that. So since I've quit this job, I reverted to a little bit of that frugality initially. In shopping for hotel rooms, right, on the road and all of this. But even then, only really willing to put a minimum effort in. But I do have a decent degree of skill in finding a deal on a hotel room. To this time, pretty quickly, it was just like, if I find the price to be real, I'm paying $90 a night for this hotel. I'll just go ahead and tell you that $90 a night. Now, could I? Well, I probably could not pay much less than 75. And, you know, is it even worth it to go? It's like, what's even the value of the money at that point? The $15 I could save, right? Because no matter what happens, I am going to run out of money unless something intervenes. So this is what folks don't seem to realize. This is not manifesting. It's just like with my health woes, I'm not saying that when I was that ill and I talked about actively dying and all of that, it was not manifesting. And it's also, I took it that motherfucking seriously. And that, I believe, had a lot to do with even being able to be healed this much. And I always said, look, it looks like I'm checking out of here in the next couple of years. And I always said, unless there's always a potential for divine intervention. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what has been happened. Christ Jesus, that's what I choose to call it. Christ Jesus has intervened at the level of my physical health in conjunction with my own asking ye shall receive, my own manifesting, my own law of attraction, right? My own willingness and ability to change my lifestyle and to accept being delivered from the wicked spirit of alcohol. Because my understanding of all of this is, if I was unrepentant, right, and didn't view alcoholism in a certain type of way, I would not have been, legally speaking, the demonic spirits would be able to say, well, actually, based on his behavior, he's not entitled to this deliverance. I've been delivered from the drink. I drank some alcohol since I quit my job. Let's see. The most amount I had in one day totaled 4 12-ounce beers of a normal, alcohol by volume. And that was the most I ever had in one day. And I'm almost certain, and I think there was maybe only a total of 3 days where I had alcohol. Maybe, yeah, 3 total days And if those were in the same 7-day period, then I still did not exceed whatever the amount of drinks for a week would be recommended by medical science to not harm my health. Right. And if that's not proof of being delivered, I don't know what is, you know? And I've said it before, I've always been able to have 1 or 2 beers and stop. My thing has been if I have 4 or 5 and I want to keep drinking, I'll just keep drinking. I've always been that way. So like the one day I had the 4 beers, I had 2. I waited till that buzz wore off and then I had 2 more. It was completely fine, you know? No problem whatsoever. Um, that's what deliverance looks like, folks. I had no fear of, oh my God, it's just like, there he goes back to the drink, right? I had no fear of that. My only fear would have been, just imagine how many people actually regain their health only to destroy it yet again with alcohol, because that's what I've noticed with a lot of drinkers. And I got to where I started to do my own versions of this, is where they stop drinking for a period of time long enough for their body to heal up enough to be able to go back to binge drinking, right? Because at a certain point, and I think maybe this is where that toilet bowl earth has gotten to, TBE, if anybody knows who that is. Maybe he's getting to that point where it's fucking up his, especially if somebody gets into their 30s, approaching 40, the way a fella, and I was only ever a binge drinker historically, but if a person's a daily drinker, what that's going to do to their body in their 20s versus what it's going to do to their body when they're damn near 40, that's 2 different fucking sports. But why shouldn't I enjoy myself? And but again, what's the expectation of the delusory adversarial realm of business is, well, now he's got a cushion of money and now he can, sort of decide what he wants to do. Maybe he can go back to truck driving. And yeah, I can go back to truck driving. It appears like I'll always be able to go back to truck driving as long as the industry still needs to put a human in the seat, which is not going to be that much longer, but it's still a thing. Anyway, I got distracted. There was some birds crossing the street. Somebody thinks like honking at them's not going to do anything. I promise you. They're not concerned about the honking. They'll do their own honking. Thank you very much. But yeah, back to the money stuff. Oh yeah, my apologies before I sidetrack myself. So one of my big spiritual practices has just been, you know, it seems like the person, or me in this case, I'm always most susceptible to spiritual attack. Almost always is right when I wake up in the morning. So then here comes the creeping thoughts and the dread of, well, first it's the money situation, but then it's also, now we get into the guilt, right? So first there's the fear of not having money. Then there's the shame, the guilt and shame of, well, look at you, you bozo. Look at how you've been spending your money. Right. But then it's also very quickly, it's like, well, wait a minute. When properly identified, I can't, what I am is incapable of experiencing fear, guilt, and shame. So what are we even talking about? Like those birds that just cross this busy street, they don't have the capacity to fear that. I hope that's clear. They're not brave birds crossing a busy road. They don't have the ability to fear that. It's not in them to fear that. So the practice for me has been recognizing, going through those just a few fleeting brief moments of that, fear, guilt, shame spiral, which I'm not that acquainted with, actually. I've noticed that I figured out long ago, I've got way less fear, way less guilt, and way less shame than other people for whatever reason. And maybe that ties into some of my arguably dark triad style personality traits. I don't know. But thankfully, I don't have a full shot of any of that stuff, psychopathy or narcissism or any of it. I didn't get the full, I got a smattering of almost all of it, apparently. Antisocial traits, fucking narcissistic traits, dark triad type shit, Machiavellianism. I got a smattering of all of it, apparently, but I didn't get the full shot of any of it, thankfully. And this morning, like it was, and it's funny because the practice of that I'm talking about, there's been a time recently, and then my brain will start doing the math of, wow, 10 nights in this motel is $900. It's like, holy, but then it's like, well, yeah, but what did I actually do to get the $900? It's like, well, I mean, other than the indignities I subjected myself to, by the way that I was treated by the company, other than that, really not much of anything. Although, again, the delusory adversarial realm of business will at least pretend like long haul trucking is like a worthy, productive thing. But the reality is, truckers are treated like the chumps that they are. Truckers are chump pushovers. Long haul truckers, they're pushovers and they're chumps, and they'll put up with damn near anything. And it's so bad. I've gone to a shipper, or probably a shipper, and I had the lady treat me so bad. I said, listen, it doesn't matter to me how you treat these other drivers. I said, you can't talk to me like that. I don't know what this is. And a big part of it was that their in-house carrier was this Western Express, who mainly hires felons out of prison, which is fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, but I guess a lot of these guys are so desperate not to go back to prison that they'll put up with almost anything, or they just don't care. Maybe at a certain point, it's just like, yeah, it's some old white lady being nasty. Who cares? Maybe if somebody comes out of the penitentiary, maybe that's neither here nor there. I don't fucking know. And I just be like, look, you can talk to whoever else, whatever way you want to, but you're not talking to me like that. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not even sure what made me think of that, but yeah. So we had a lot of direct customers with this last company, so I didn't even deal with very much of that sort of thing. It was the company itself treating me like a machine. And of course, why wouldn't they? Because number one, most long haul truckers will either quit or they will put up with damn near anything. So why wouldn't they put up with being expected to behave like a machine? Right. Why wouldn't they? Sorry, I keep getting distracted by the birds crossing the street up here. And then they always just kind of know who's not going to stop for them, right? Because I seem to always just have a way of letting them know, like, yeah, live and let live, birds, but we ain't stopping. So I don't know what to tell you. Just I'll slow down just enough for y'all to mosey on out of the way. But if you think I'm going to sit here and just watch 100 of y'all cross the road, you're out of your mind. Somehow they can just always sort of tell who that person is. And so this morning, it's not that I was expecting that spiritual attack. It was just, I guess I've gotten so good at it. It was just, I looked at the spiritual attack and just said, wow, this is such a weak attack. I guess is this on the verge of just, it's not going to happen anymore? Because I have to assume every once in a while I wake up some morning and just that doesn't happen at all. And I just don't notice, but it was laughably trivial and it's not a fake it till you make it of, oh, well, the money's not real and the government's illegitimate. It's not all of that stuff. It's the actual reality of, well, even if it comes to me eating out of the motherfucking garbage cans, I'm still going to eat. And even if it comes to sleeping on the motherfucking sidewalk, been there, done that, and I've got blankets, and if not, I can find some, and you know, yeah, it might be it's 58 overnight or whatever. I mean, who cares? Like at the end of the day, this is not that big of a fucking deal. Whatever we're going to be dealing with. And at this point, it's like, do I really want to just drag around a backpack everywhere I go? You know, so I can have, my creature comforts, you know, maybe have just enough room for some mushroom powders or whatever, you know. Oh, I got my lion's mane, you know, whatever. My cordyceps. Well, you know, I already got my damn little stoves and my little pots and, you know, whatever, my little kettles, whatever I'm going to need to make my egg drinks. That's not negotiable, of course. And then, you know, the recognition of, like, I was parked in my car, you know, more or less in the general vicinity of where I'm parked right now for however many months. I think it was at least 6 straight months, you know, walking around every day, picking up cans and bottles, you know, taking advantage of whatever the county would let me have, you know, for welfare, and which is not a lot, but it's something. It's more than a lot of places. And you know, the generous donations on this channel. Now look, now the birds are all going back across the street again. This is crazy. And I think it's because they got some babies, and the babies don't know not to just go across the street willy-nilly. That's what it is. Oh, and there's food in the streets. Whatever little berries drop out of these trees. That's what it is the little ones are trying to go in the street to get the berries. Of course, the ones who can't get the message are going to get run the fuck over. As they almost got run over, as I said that, and because somebody was attempting to run a red light at about 60 miles an hour. But they were spared. But yeah, the ones who are more inclined to going into the street for the berries are not going to be around. So by the time it's the adults, those are the ones who, you know, they won't go into the street for the berries by the time they get to that age. And then, you know, what's the patience? You know, look at the parents, look at the big birds. You know, are they out here screaming at the baby birds? Are the baby birds in trouble because they've walked into the street and done something wrong? And this is something that started to bother me recently. You know, I'm less onto these true crime stuff, especially the stuff involving children. I'm getting to where I can't even really put up with it. But you know, it's something struck me in the YouTube comments. It had something to do with something horrible that happened to some like 2 or 3-year-old or whatever. And somebody was referring in passing to like one of their nephews or nieces or whatever, and said something about how what their behavior was like when they were, quote, in trouble. And I just thought to myself, how the fuck can a 2-year-old be in trouble? Like that, just that concept alone shows you how wicked and lost humanity is. Because I'm watching a bunch of grown ass adult birds, and they're not they're actually watching and trying to help the birds not get run the fuck over while maintaining their own safety. There's actually one of the grown ass birds is in the road, just sort of like, I guess I'll supervise this foolishness, right? But there's no anger, there's no punishment, there's no admonishment, because this is how the birds will learn. And the ones that don't learn are going to not be here, right? So just the concept of, you know, oh, it's a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, and this is how it tends to behave when it's, quote, in trouble. It's like, I mean, why is there even a concept that a 2 or a 3-year-old could do something to be in trouble? That's sick, man. It's sick. It really is. That's a sickness. And I understand people will say, "Oh, well, you don't know what it's like." Yeah, I don't know what it's like. I know what it's like to be parented. I know what it's like to be harshly rebuked and admonished and in trouble from a very young. Yeah, I know what that's like. I don't have any fucking idea what it's like to participate in that from the other side. You're right. I have no idea what it's like because I broke the motherfucking cycle, and I'm the only one in my family who can say that on either side. I broke the cycle. I did not bring new lives into this world and then uh, put them under conditions of harsh discipline, and you're in trouble, right? Because that's what I would have done. Just like both my sisters, they popped out kids right about age 20, and they treated those kids exactly like we were treated, right? And I'm sure that's exactly what I would have done if I would have had a kid at 20, right? And then I'd be sitting here at 50 looking back on it going, wow, that was fucked up. Why did I do all that? Or even worse, not even doubling down and just like especially Southerners like to all get together sometimes if corporal punishment gets mentioned, and then it's like everybody's like proud and bragging about how bad they were as kids and that they needed those spankings. Listen, I don't think it should be legal to hit anybody. I think it should be flatly illegal to hit another person under any circumstances. That's my opinion. Meaning, that's right, parents. I think it should be against the law for you to physically strike your child. Because do you own that child? Is that child your property? Or especially for Christians, isn't that supposedly again, Nancy Pelosi's MS-13 spark of divinity? And I'm watching birds out here who are engaging in way more dangerous activity than whatever your 2 or 3 year old is up to when they're getting a smack on the hand and they're in trouble. I'm watching these birds repeatedly, these baby birds repeatedly go face their potential demise, but they don't know. They have no concept of that these vehicles might run them the fuck over and kill them. But they're not in trouble. And so what's the human going to come up with? Say, oh, well, it's for their protection. Well, I don't know, man. Isn't part of learning is some of these motherfuckers get run over in the street? And yeah, it sucks and we don't like it. But isn't that part of the thing? Right? In spite of all efforts. So why apply efforts to all of the children that we know for a fact is going to cause them damage? The idea of them being in trouble, a 2-year-old being in trouble. How can a 2-year-old be in trouble unless they're being expected to act and behave like an adult? That's what I'd like to know. It's not even possible. And that's how lost humanity is. And to me, it's further evidence of something I know to be a 100% fact is this sacrifice to Moloch. It's the literal blood sacrifice, right? Well, not blood, not literally blood, but it's the sacrifice figuratively, a figurative sacrifice, right? Symbolically, where generation after generation after generation, people knowingly or unknowingly offer their children up and just let Moloch have its way with them. That's what this place is, at least in part. That's what is happening. That's what has happened. That's what seemingly will continue to happen. Right. So I don't know if a person has unknowingly, but again, with the human mind, the subconscious mind perfectly decoding all symbols, I guess people really do know on some level. But if a person's offered up their children to a pagan deity called Moloch and just said, "Here, have at our little Johnnies and our little Susies," well, why? What's so bad then about the 2-year-old Johnny or Susie being in trouble, right? And now we got to hit them, right? Oh, really? Because I'm watching a bunch of birds, baby birds, wander into the street repeatedly, and none of they're not being physically attacked by the larger birds. So what's going on here? And yes, some of them are going to get run over and killed. I mean, most not necessarily, but probably there's a pretty decent chance of it happening at some point. But see, and as I watch this now, all traffic is stopped in both directions because of the birds. And there's some woman out there in the street trying to assist them into going to the other side of the street, uh, which is probably not going to work. But um, isn't this some acknowledgement of the biblical idea of you know the birds of the air neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and I take care of them anyway, and the whole thing around don't worry about what I'm going to wear and what I'm going to eat and all of this. Just people's behavior around how they're behaving towards these birds, right? Because am I not of much greater value than the birds, right? Well, now that I know that what I am is one with the force that made all of this, or that at least is capable of making all of this, even, sadly in this case, perhaps as a delusion, right? In the case of this realm, this delusory adversarial realm of business, why wouldn't I know and trust that, you know, uh, on some level, I will be cared for to some extent, whether it's, but then what do people say? Oh, but remember, we've all, and not we, the royal we, but, and then so I can already hear the peanut gallery. Oh, okay, well, you think, who are you to just sit around and do nothing, and not serve business and not serve Moloch and all of this, you know, now you think you get to kick back and just have a free, cushy, easy life. It's like, did you miss the part where I talked about sleeping on a motherfucking sidewalk and maybe eating out of a garbage? Like, did we skip past the part where I'm eating out of a garbage can some of the time? Or, maybe just, now my car is roach infested because I used to pick up cans and bottles and I would leave them overnight in the car out of convenience. And then eventually my fucking car got infested with. I mean, did you miss all that? Because this idea, see, that's mind control. It's the idea that if a person is able to kick back and relax and not go out here and punch a clock and serve business every day, that's just that's a life on easy street. Are you crazy? What easy street? If it was easy street, why wouldn't everybody do it? And sort of that's kind of the fear deep down, is this idea of well, what if everybody just takes it to the streets? you know but then they know, again, now we're back to preferences and we're back to creature comforts. These people, they know they're going to go to work because they got to keep up with the Joneses. They got mouths to feed. We got kids. We want to, we're looking forward to paying off the fucking Silverado, and then Papa's going to get him a new pickup, and just all the various machinations of life in a consumer society, right? In stage capitalism, as they might call it. So again, I'll bring it back to not what would Jesus do, what wouldn't Jesus do? Because remember, principles, once we attach circumstances to principles, if the principle changes, it's not a principle, right? So what wouldn't Jesus do? Well, I'll tell you what, Jesus, were he here and he just poof magically appeared on the sidewalk, he would not go out and seek employment, right? So a lot of the way people approach these problems is backwards. They say, well, you know, it's almost the employment as problem solving for life. So it's like, well, what do you mean? What if, I don't know, wasn't there supposedly a Great Depression and, millions of people were out of work? I don't know. What did they do? Right? Like, is it just always, is employment always an option? Right? Like, I just don't understand. So is it really impossible that spiritually I'm now possessed of, or that's not even the right term, but I'll come up with the right term eventually, but you know, imbued with, perhaps, whatever this is, ignorantly, I probably didn't understand in the past the actual implications of serving a delusory adversarial realm of business, right? And just what does that affirm? You know, um, again, if Christianity teaches, oh, well, go out here and be Christ-like, but understand that you'll never be able to do it fully. It's impossible to ever actually achieve this thing that we're telling you to do. And oh, by the way, it's almost everything, almost every moment of your life and all of your actions are going to be in the context of business, right? Again, what wouldn't Jesus do? I'm pretty sure Jesus, there's a 0% possibility that Jesus, if he was a real person, again, I've got my own thoughts and opinions on the matter, but whatever that being is meant to represent, at least symbolically, would that being have ever allowed its own life to be involved with business? And I understand people are always going to go back to the carpenter thing. I'm talking about as an adult man. There doesn't seem to be much evidence for Christ holding down a job. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about whether he may or may not have worked alongside Joseph or whoever, as a lad. All right, brief pause while I plug in the phone to charge. I at least need to try to keep some battery here for the rest of the day. And I will throw down the gauntlet to the so-called truth community in a way by saying, uh, my own competitive spirit, starting out in some ways with basketball as a child, and um, I'll throw down the gauntlet to the so-called truth community, with a couple of notable exceptions. I'm running circles around virtually all of them, with my thoughts and my ideas and my thinking and my discourse. Although it could be a little more focused, but I just mean broadly speaking. Um, and you know, I can't do anything about the part where other people might find that discouraging. Because as a competitor, I always got fired up when, the higher the competition got, it fired me up. Right. I was never like, showed up and then it's like, oh my God, look at these monsters. Because that happened every once in a while. Just some local fucking monsters would show up, and you couldn't really do nothing with them. And that I always got excited by that. It's like, all right, here we go. Now I get to sort of test my mettle against a higher level of competition than what I was normally able to access, right? And I can represent that in some way, you know, because if the thinkers, right, if the thinkers of the so-called community, would maybe become a little more competitive and a little more willing to put themselves out there, and maybe a little, more courageous, right? Because some of that is a willingness to sort of just get over my skis and put myself out there and potentially, be made to appear foolish. You know, um, I would like to see everybody competitively uh, put their ass in gear with their own critical thinking skills, their own ability to access logic, right? But again, back to the basketball example, this is years, right? This is years to get to a point. So if somebody, and a lot of what I'm talking about on here is not exactly earth shattering, but I even impress myself at times. And again, back to the idea of, you know, toiling and struggling and working and putting in the time and the reps. I've done all of that, but I've done it in a way that's leveled up my abilities. And I haven't necessarily done it in a way that honors and validates this delusory adversarial realm of business. See? And as we know, Americans, everything's a business and we only measure in money. So the fact that what I'm speaking on is not quantifiable in money, people would then, that's where the desire is always there to turn it into a business, to turn Benton into a brand, which I guess it already is in some way, but to brand myself as some version of a guru, life coach, seminars, courses, whatever that is, right? And that would be a huge error, right? I'm not able, it's one or the other. I can't do that and get to where I'm aiming to get to, right? And which is maybe where I already am. I mean, that's one thing about these breakthroughs. It's difficult to know when one is on the verge of a breakthrough. Right now, in hindsight, it's like, okay, well, there were the signs that I was on the verge of a breakthrough. But when the person's in it, it's hard to know that they're on the verge of a breakthrough. And so, I will brag about my athleticism to some extent. When I was playing at my highest level, schoolyard, playground pickup basketball, I was about 5'8", 130, maybe 135 pounds, no more than 135 pounds. About 5'8", maybe 5'9". I'm 5'10" and a half now. 130 pounds, and I could dribble down a basketball court, and I could jump and fly through the air, and I could make layups in the face of 6'4", 200 plus pound, long armed black fellas. Okay. And most of y'all don't know nothing about that, and that's fine. The point I'm trying to make is it was years from the day I started and devoted myself to getting good at basketball. It was literal years from that day to the day till I first became able to dribble directly at a gigantic black man who was going to attempt to block my shot and then jump into the air, fly at him, and make a layup. Right. Years. Years. Same thing with a lot of these spiritual topics, a lot of this discourse, these ways of thinking. What I'm talking to y'all about today, this was years in the making of daily practice. So when I devoted myself to beginning good at basketball, I did it every single day. I took my happy ass. I got my basketball and I took my happy ass to the basketball court every single day for years. Same thing with the spiritual stuff. Same thing with the meditation. Same things with the thought process. Every single day for years. This is kind of fun watching people go 60 miles an hour on a city street only to have to slam their brakes on for these birds. This is hilarious. And if people want to say, oh, well, God's in control. Well, listen, it doesn't seem that way to me, but if a God's in control, that's how God's in control is a bunch of baby birds in the street and people are trying to go 60 miles an hour and repeatedly slamming their brakes on. If God's in control, that's what's meant by God's in control. It's not the idea of, well, Donald Trump's the president, and the American military is still strong and, the dollar still spins, right? It's not that, you know. And just the widespread confusion, you know, I can't, a big part of me being unable, I can't even really even have anything to do with folks anymore, generally speaking. And I'm not, again, this is not me martyring myself. It's just the average level of confusion of the average person. It's fucking shocking. I mean, it really just, and I was confused and I'm still confused to some extent, and that is a normal part of being a person is, there's some level of confusion. And then what I see is a lot of people doubling down on confusion and just, again, the human with the psychology within Moloch's machine, there's seemingly a never ending series of sophistications, right? There's always an ever more sophisticated means for avoiding seeming confused, because realistically, that's all anybody cares about. They don't, these people, when I talk about they only care about themselves, well, they also don't give a flying fuck about if they're confused or not. They only care about the part where, is that a problem for them? So okay, well, if it is a problem, it may only be a problem if other people become aware of it. So okay, well, look, there's all these sophisticated means to make sure that the other people do not become aware of that level of confusion, whereas I've just never really cared about that. I make a joke out of it. Sometimes I'm confused in public, like at a store or something, trying to pay or whatever I'm trying to do. I just make a joke out of it. I'm like, oh yeah, I spread confusion everywhere I go, which is kind of almost an inside joke as far as, the God Satan thing, right? But people get a laugh out of that. But I'm not willing. There were times in the past where I was willing, because I, for whatever reason, placed a high enough value on what I believed I might be able to get out of an interaction or series of interactions or a job or a friendship or a romance or whatever that was, you know, that I was willing to subject myself to the confusion of other people and to treat it as if, well, in fact, these people aren't confused. And in fact, you know, they're actually intelligent and capable, to just sort of, again, join in sort of that social contract where, the supposition is that everybody's competent and intelligent and capable. Uh, but here I am watching what they're doing and it's proving quite, you know, otherwise, right? So the problem, it's not a problem, but what's happened now is the value that I'm willing to place upon, and probably what's happening is I'm now accessing enough actual reality. And I'll be specific about what I mean by actual reality, but I'm probably now actually accessing enough reality. That's me, right? That the proper value is being placed on some of these items, including the money itself, right? Or some of these potential experiences, to where I'm not able to value these things enough to participate in the collective confusion. The incentive is simply no longer there. And I also know that it's effectively impossible. You know, if somebody's going to figure out parts of what I'm talking about here, or even all of what I'm talking about here, they're more or less going to do it on their own. You know, now maybe I could be one of the little nuggets, of inspiration here and there, right? Uh, ultimately, I might only serve to help motivate people, but again, I'm one of these motivation is crap people like David Goggins. Motivation is external, right? If I'm dependent on something outside of me for motivation, that's already a flawed strategy, right? And it seems to me, it's obvious to me at this point that human psychology, designed to operate in service of Moloch's machine within this, industrial society, military industrial complex, if you want to call it that, within all of these structures. Hang on, I kind of lost my train of thought, but I feel like it's coming back. It might just be my hope station talking, though. I hope it comes back. The psychology designed within all of these things. I was making a larger point about that. Sometimes I get too bogged down in the descriptions of what I'm leading up to. What was it? Shit. Oh, because of advertising and marketing in the consumer society, and business itself functions. I don't know how aware of this you folks are. It's more or less just admitted on Front Street, but business, now that everything's so corporatized, the way business functions psychologically on the populace is through it's psychological attacks. These mechanisms and these systems of man, and marketing and advertising, and all of these, you know, the further evolution and sophistication, and the never-ending record profits for a lot of these large corporations. It's all conducted via the populace being subjected to psychological attack. And I'm not speaking hyperbolically. I mean actual psychological attack. So this is where you get into sort of the Stockholm syndrome, identifying with one's captor, or, one's, whoever's imprisoning them. So if the prison is the delusory adversarial realm of business, then the jailers, right? There's a lot of the beatings. A lot of the beatings are based on getting the people to purchase particular products and services, especially when that purchase is actually against the person's own interest in the long run, which is where we get into this buy now, pay later type shit. The Klarnas and all, which again, I don't even really know what all that is, because, Cash App will never stop sending me notifications telling me that I can borrow a certain amount of money. And what Cash App doesn't know is it can send me 5 trillion of those. I'll never, ever take advantage of that, air quotes. If I do, it'll only ever be because I'll just be like, well, it's because I will place no value on having Cash App. As long as I see a value in having Cash App, I will never, ever take out their line of credit. I won't even consider it, because I know it can't be in my favor. It's just not possible. It has to be in their favor. And then I see all of the excuse making for what's predatory. So, the supposedly red pilled channel, which is just a lot of it is just making fun of Western women. I mean, let's call it what it is. But, and then, bemoaning the way things are, right? But, there's a lot of this idea of blaming the victim, right? So the blaming of the victim is where we say, well, yeah, but if people would properly utilize all of these things, then it's completely fine. The Klarnas and the 4 monthly installments of whatever. No, it's not. It's not fine, because by that same logic, what we're doing is we're allowing business to prey upon people through particular mechanisms. And the justification is, well, if they would only use it properly. And I'll say, well, by that same logic, if they would conduct their financial affairs properly, why do they need to break this purchase up into 4 installments in the first place? Why haven't they already saved the money to buy it? The fact that they don't have the money to buy it right motherfucking now proves to me that something's already gone wrong. And they're like, oh, well, easy for you to say. What do you mean easy for me to say? You know, I've chosen not to purchase a $500 phone that I've been wanting on some level for like 6 months now, and I still have the money to buy it. And at no point would I have ever considered to pay it over 4 installments. And even if I would have considered that, at no point would I have needed to, because even right now I've got the money. I could right now just order the thing to an Amazon locker, and it's not going to change anything about my life. I'll be completely fine. But so people don't the individuals don't understand that their very psychology is based on and is operating based on business principles. So that now out of their own mouths, they're like, oh, well, it's completely fine. If it's not completely fine. A proper society, in my view, a proper society would not permit. Did I not get close enough to the curb? That's one thing about parking in the city. I didn't realize that I left about 4 inches. I could have got closer to the curb. Oh well, it happens. So this is back to the idea of why. Have you ever asked yourself, why does society have to be based entirely on business? And if you want to go ahead and say, well, it's not, that's fine. It is on this channel. On this channel, everything about society is based on business. If you want to go have your own channel, or you want to go talk about somewhere else, that's fine. On this channel, that is a 100% fact. And I don't need you to agree with it. I just need people to realize this is not the place to debate or poke holes in or undermine. This is a place to say, okay, well, I don't necessarily agree with what Benton is saying here, but for the purposes of the discussion, I'm willing to entertain this idea, at least for the present moment, even if I know I'm going to go right back to abandoning it later. See, this is not the place where I make an assertion like that, and then now we go by. Now we let everybody sort of put their 2 cents in. This is not this is not what's happening here. Absolutely not. If it was, then I wouldn't be able to get what I need out of this. So when people say, "Well, yeah, Benton, you know, you doing these live streams does seem to run counter to some of the very ideas that you're espousing," it's like, yeah, I'll grant you that, except I do benefit from the speaking it out loud portion. And yes, I understand I'm able to do that without doing it on a live stream, but it does sort of make it a little more real. It is something of a commitment, that there may actually be human beings listening to this, perhaps. And competitively, I want to put on a halfway decent performance if possible, competitively. And I've been needing to go to the bathroom for like 20 minutes, and um, until my discourse falls below a certain level, or eventually it's just like, well, I'm a man of a certain age, and I'm going to need to, at a certain point, it's going to become a medical necessity. Outside of all of that, um, I'm inclined to continue on. But yeah, if the discourse falls, it's seeming like maybe it's going to fall low enough. So back to the idea. See, that to me only makes sense. The backwards rationalizing and all of this justifications for just letting people be preyed upon by business, it's in some way an acknowledgement, yeah, that everything about society is based. There's nothing that's not based on business. It's all based on business. Is the purpose of this? Is the purpose of Earth? Is the purpose of being a person? Is it to love your family? Is it to raise your kids? Is it to have a community? Is it to have a community and to have positive vibes? Or is it so business can operate. Because I'm here to tell you, it can never be both. You can never have the first society and also have elements of the other one. So you're either going to have a society that's entirely based on business, or you're going to have a different type of society that has as little to do with business as possible. Again, now we're back to the what wouldn't Jesus do? So the only value I see for collectivism, for collectively the people actually following the teachings of Christ. Now, I shouldn't say the only benefit, but the major benefit that I can see would be that it would eliminate the possibility of a society based on business and finance and transactions, because there would not be people in the realm who are willing to base their lives on business. And people can say till they're blue in the face, my life's not based on business. Well, keep telling yourself that. I I know what's going on here. I don't. No benefit accrues to me if the other person agrees, or if the other person accepts or rejects what I'm saying. I don't get a benefit to that. So okay, great, good for you. Who cares? That's your problem. What's that got to do with me? I'm not involved in any of that. I'm looking forward to the day when most likely I'm just probably, and I can't say for sure. I can't say for sure, but I may very well be done with employment. I'm certainly virtually seemingly done with it in the long term, but who knows? I think there's always been versions of, growing up, didn't we all run across somebody somewhere, some oddball who just like, lived in a shed on somebody's property somewhere, and, he volunteers at the local whatever, and, does a little, regular jobs here and there, shows up at this time and place and does whatever, and makes just enough money to scrape by, right? I could see myself settling into some version of that, you know. I mean, again, who cares? But especially at 40, and this shows you how evil and wicked and diabolical this thing is that I think it's just because I come across as like a youthful person, because I've never fully grown up as much as I am an adult and all these things and responsible. I've never fully grown up all the way. And, I think I have enough youthful vigor and sort of a, my own indomitable spirit. I've had people talk to me where they're talking to me about employment as if they think I'm just going to go like apprentice and become like a journeyman fucking electrician or something. It's like, bro, I'm 50. You, there's no such thing as a 50-year-old. Like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to go at age 50 and learn a trade. That's a young man's game, folks. Meanwhile, if there was a proper society, if there was a proper, if society was based on anything other than business and serving business and what's good for corporations, because see, what was decided when I was coming of age, what was decided was, oh, corporations, the thing is, the worker of the future and the near future is going to be somebody with a college degree sitting at a desk somewhere in the air conditioning. Air conditioning from the perspective of employment was still such a luxury back then, right? It was some version of, it would be foolish to send little Benton here off to the local Votech, right? Because he's too good to become a welder or a plumber or an electrician or whatever, or a carpenter. When in reality, what would have served Benton the most would have been, oh, wait a minute, we recognize that Benton is actually a highly skilled and accomplished student who actually enjoys reading and research and learning, but he's not really college material unless we just let him go to the university and just study whatever he feels like studying. But he can do that he doesn't need a university for that, right? So if I had proper guidance, or it could have been like, hey, let's send Benton off to the local Votech, but we're going to treat him special. We're going to put him through a special program He's not going to become a plumber. He's not going to become an electrician. He's not going to become a carpenter. He's going to learn everything. We're going to put him through every course at the local Votech. And then if he wants to, he's going to apprentice as an electrician. And then after that, he's going to apprentice as a plumber. And then after that, see, and he's going to learn how to do everything, which I absolutely 100% was capable of. And I probably would have been top of my class in the electrician course. I probably would have been top of my class in the plumbing course. I probably would have been top of my class in the fucking carpentry course. But because what Moloch's machine was looking for at the time was, we need white collar workers, right? And the upside was, oh well, you know, plumbing and to trades is not necessarily viewed favorably, right? So now we sort of get into the prestige of, well, there's prestige and there's reputation, and you know, there's all of these things, right? And you know, the idea of you know, some woman might want to, you know, make this fella her husband. Well, that's a two-way street. Also, it's like, well, what's he going to have to offer, you know, as a spouse? See, that plays into it also. But as an individual, again, now we're back to the peace and the love, and what's the realm even for? It's certainly not to serve the people who are here. So what would have worked, right, would have been to treat me like an actual individual and said, well, his greatest contributions to society would probably be, you know, to, you know, instead of have him do a bunch of meaningless low-level jobs or whatever and sort of just find his own way in the world after wasting a bunch of time in college, which wasn't even a waste of time because I maximized, you know, a lot of that socially. Um, I had a great time, but well, I didn't maximize it socially with respect to networking. I just mean this with respect to me having a good time is really what I mean. Um, but see, that would have made sense. And then so now I would be sitting here at age 50, and when people are treating me as if I have the ability to go learn, yeah, I do have the ability to go learn pretty much any trade. But the time to do all of that is when the kid is 20, not when he's 50. It's just complete insanity, right? But because of the nature of the delusory adversarial realm of business, and the fact that because of my most likely because of my neurodivergence, I'm not capable of coming across as incompetent. In fact, people tend to uh, they tend to treat me as if I'm actually probably more competent than I really am in certain ways, you know. Um, and so that pressure used to work on me even up until the last few years. I've gotten to where it's just now I just recognize that pressure is, oh, well, these people, and a lot of it is when people see someone else with an ability that they don't have, a lot of times they fetishize it. And this happens with autistic people a lot. People will see that I can very easily and effortlessly do things. They will then project that skill into their life. But what they don't do is they don't take away the things that I struggle with. Because there's a lot of things that come very easily and naturally to a lot of folks that I struggle with. So they don't ever, they just fetishize, oh, well, look how great things would be if we had this ability Benton has. Except it wouldn't be, because we would have to take away these other things that you take for granted. We got to remove some of those. You don't get to have all of it if you're going to be like Benton. So, and do you think I would have given a damn if they would have told me that, yeah, we're, you know, sending you to the Votech and there's a program, and you know, you're going to be different than most of the other students, and you're going to take all the courses, right? Well, hell, I just went through the public school system and did absolutely no homework and graduated because I knew that I could make a perfect score on all the tests and quizzes. So I'm pretty fucking sure I could pass the book learning portion of carpentry and plumbing and electrical. You know, maybe I'll have to apply myself a little more, but you know, probably not going to be a problem, right? Anyway, I'm on my way to the bathroom, so I'll be back. I don't want to yell at everybody in the park, so I'll be right back. Hang on, we're almost back, but not quite. I mean, okay, I'm back. We back. You know, how much different would life be if people were just told the truth from day one? You know, what if as soon as they were old enough to understand, you know, what if the children were taught from a very young age, you were born into this place and your function, your purpose in life is to uh, provide to businesses what it is that they need so that they can continue to make record profits, so that the wealthy elite can continue to become wealthier every moment into perpetuity. Because that's the reality of the situation. That's what every single one of us was born into, unless, you know, God forbid somebody that was listening who was actually born into real wealth, right? But assuming one was not born into actual wealth, that's the reality of what's happened here. But it can't ever be spoken. It can't ever be acknowledged, right? Just imagine how different life would be if people were just told that from day one. Look, this is you're here for this. We brought you here because Walmart has a stock price and it has to go up over time, no matter what. It has to go up. And in order for that to happen, you must do all of these things, whether you want to do them or not. Right? Boy, I did park way far away from the curb. What a silly thing to do. And you know, just all of the pretense, all of the pretending like this life is something other than what it actually is. Right? You know, the way my personality operates, I would do a lot better, you know, other than, well, let me figure out the harsh truth, you know, by age 50. Yeah, that's one thing. Or uh, how about just tell me from day one? And also, it's further acknowledgement that, generally speaking, nobody has any fucking idea what's going on here. And I'm including the people who, especially the people who seem intelligent, the people who are supposed, right? Generally speaking, again, there's always exceptions to everything. Effectively, nobody has any fucking idea what's going on. I mean, realistically, just no fucking idea. Because, you know, in with all of my my problems and the neurodivergence and all of this, if somebody had just told me, hey man, uh there's a lot of fake nonsense going on in the world, but here's the trick. If you think you're going to have a normal life when you're 50, the only way that's ever going to happen is you got to get as rich as humanly possible when you're young. It's this society has this idea around, we just go get a job, work hard, you know, provide. So that's all bullshit lies. You're fucking 20 right now. It's 1995, and you're going to be 50 in 2025. And if you think you're going to be able to afford to live in when you're 50, that's only going to happen if you get as rich as possible now. I would have just got as rich as possible. Like, I legitimately was ignorant. In my mind, I think it was just like, well, I know I'm employable. I know I can do a good job. And, you know, probably I don't need a lot of things. So I'm sure it'll be fine. Right. And I don't know that I ever had those thoughts. But whereas if somebody would have just, and again, they didn't know. Right. They didn't know. But yeah, that was the thing was, yeah, in order to live at age 50 in this system based on, again, what the place is, a delusory um, adversarial realm of business, right? And then what? I guess I would have what? I'd be retired by 50, and I would have what? Age 50 to 75, maybe, to try to figure out uh, the spiritual, all this other stuff, So, I mean, probably it happened the way it was supposed to anyway. Because I do value certainly the where I'm at, mind, body, and spirit. Um, that makes it almost impossible to regret, anything from my past. Not that I have a lot of regrets, but um, yeah, it's wild to think about it that way. So, and here's another thing, the idea of Jesus and Christianity and what wouldn't Jesus do in all of this. But, I do on occasion meet a young person in their 20s. And this is really, uh, not often, but occasionally somebody might ask me for advice. It has happened. But, I said, hey, man, the only thing I can tell you is just get as rich as you possibly can. I mean, I don't know what else to say to you. Now, as far as spiritually and all those other things, that's not for me to advise necessarily. What I'm saying is based on what's going on in the world and the way this world operates. And see, the world already operated this way when I was born in 1975. It was just the timing of everything and the way it just sort of all conspired, where I caught a period of time where if a person was just willing to show up and actually, do a half-ass job, right? And could halfway manage their money, life was, relatively, I won't say easy, but uh especially for a younger confused person, right? um it's certainly doable. So, why put myself through all of that? And I won't say to have nothing to show for it, because that's not the case. It's the fact that if a person's going to go through that anyway, why not do it knowing we better get rich or die trying, realistically. And the fact is, at age 50, I just don't have the desire. Like, I don't have the desire, you um, even if I was interested in intellectually trying to figure out how to get, I'm not interested. I just don't care at this point. It's not my concern. Right. But I also recognize, it's 2025 and people are still talking about homelessness and employment as if employment has anything to do with somebody leaving homelessness. Right. Like, employment maybe in the past was a way out of homelessness. It's not now. A lot of homeless people have jobs. First of all, a lot. Secondly, just because somebody is able to work, 40 hours, aren't we simultaneously recognizing that most of the population can no longer afford to live on can no longer live, one person can't live on one 40-hour job? And that also there's really no such thing as a 40-hour job anymore, because a lot of that is now like 30 to 32 hours so that they don't have to pay benefits. So it's actually like two 30-hour jobs. But then each of the 30-hour jobs, they want they want the person to have full and open availability, right? So it may not even be doable in the first place. So now it's like, okay, we're gonna get as many hours as possible on our main gig, and then we're gonna, do DoorDash or whatever, whatever the gig economy there is, right? But so the same person who, this is the cognitive dissonance, the same person who will acknowledge that, yeah, it's basically, that's pretty much where society's at. A job no longer equals being able to pay one's way in the world. But then, oh, well, look at these homeless people. If only they'd get jobs, they wouldn't be homeless. Like, what are you talking about? Both of these things cannot be true simultaneously. Now, there's always going to be street people and there's always going to be drug addicts. So I wouldn't even look at the phenomenon of homelessness so much as I would look at the pervasiveness of it. Is, to me, way more relevant. The fact that I do live in a country that, again, because it's based entirely on business, America doesn't give a fuck if somebody sleeps in their car and works full time. All the better in some ways, right? That's an advantage to a corporation. The corporation and the business gets the advantage because the person is willing to work for less and they're willing to put up with more exploitation. And all roads in a delusory adversarial realm of business, all roads always lead back to uh, well, Benton, we need you to go subject yourself to being exploited, right? Again, what wouldn't Jesus do? I'm pretty sure Jesus wouldn't come here and then say, oh, goody, it's a corporate hellscape. Now, which one of these corporations wants to exploit me to the highest degree, right? So that I can get the most money for myself and then maybe not sleep in my car, right? Maybe not sleep in my car, but it's just completely normal now for somebody to have you know, a white collar type of job where they have to be presentable and showered and all of this, and they sleep in their car every night. That happens way more than you would ever know. Because a big part of that is what? Now we're back to what? Shame. See, that's shameful. But I don't know. Is it their fault that they're holding down a job and can't afford to sleep anywhere but their car? Right. So why I'm only ever going to view employment as exactly what it is. It's like, yeah, if I decide I want to have some money and I'm willing to tolerate whatever I have to put up with, like the long haul trucking, yeah, I managed to tolerate it for 7 weeks and probably would have tolerated it a lot longer if they weren't harassing me into trying to get me to behave like a machine because the trucks are now driving themselves. And yes, right now there's a truck. There's trucks right now on the interstate in Texas with no human in the truck, and it's hauling freight between Dallas and Houston, right motherfucking now. So don't tell me again. Don't tell me how it's never going to happen because I've been hearing for years all the reasons why it can't ever happen. It's like, well, it's happening right now, so I don't know what to tell you. And now it's just commonly accepted. Oh well, yeah, most of these jobs are going to be gone to automation uh, in the next however many years, and it ain't many years. You know, I never actually saw the entire movie of what was that, American Psycho, Patrick Bateman, but I do understand enough of the broad strokes around the portrayals of him as trying to climbing the corporate ladder and all of that, and that is what our society is, right? And then again, I haven't seen the movie, but my understanding of the portrayal of the business side of things was just, again, not vapid, just how vacuous that life is, empty, right? Devoid of meaning, right? And so much so just the obsession around like having the most impressive business card and all of this, fascinating. But again, to sort of juxtapose that with the Fight Club side of things, which is to let that which does not matter truly slide, right? You know what what uh what would Jesus do? Well, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't give a flying fuck about the stock price of whatever corporation Patrick Bateman was serving in that movie. Yeah. Well, hey, look, we got the Lord here in the flesh. Why do y'all keep trying to talk to him about business? I'm confused. You know, could I be the Lord's right hand man? You know, and just there's Jesus just kind of sheepishly standing there. Kind of just waiting for the conversation to turn to anything other than business, right? And I'll go ahead and throw politics in with business. Same fucking thing. And see that, and I started to say this hours ago now, but that is the function of the political system, is that when somebody like me does sort of introduce some of these topics, and it becomes kind of inconvenient, well, it can always be filtered through politics, which is, oh, well, yeah, you're right, Benton, but all of that is because of the blue color, right? So yeah, you're right, Benton, but we got our red color in there now. So and now we're back to the Hope Station. Now it's like, yeah, well, the color red's back in the White House, even though it's not. But yeah, the color red's back in the White House. So everything's going to be fine, right? Because we have a scapegoat. So politics really is just a scapegoat. That's the major function of politics, is how it serves Moloch's machine with respect to how the people's psychologies operate. It's just, there's always a scapegoat for whatever goes wrong. Doesn't matter what it is. Oh, well, yeah, but that's because of that blue team. And we just we'll put, most people into one of two groups, and the one group will always blame one of the two colors, and the other group will blame the other of the two colors. I mean, this is what I mean by, dude, people ain't shit, man. Like this is what people fall for, and if I imagine myself as antithesis, I would just be like shaking my head like, boy, this Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk motherfucker, man, he sure is a fool, right? Again, back to what is, my essence or my nature, one with the most super intelligent force of love and creative force possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit, again, unable, right? Unable, except perhaps within delusion, to even consider the calamities that could befall, were a delusory adversarial realm of business to be created, right? And then for me to solipsistically, surrealistically, waking dream, unreality style inhabit it for, under the delusion of time and space even being possible. And then here's old Benton somehow becoming better and better looking as the years go on. I don't know how that's quite possible, but maybe that's the rest. Maybe that's me being restored to health. I don't know. But I don't have a need to brag on my looks too much, but I will say I was in the, I don't necessarily have regular access to mirrors and all of this. And I was just kind of checking myself out in the hotel room last night. I was like, good Lord, man, this is like, what is this? It definitely is further evidence of me not being that interested in leveraging, whatever I could potentially leverage to, get whatever I thought I needed out of this material world that's apparently can't ever possibly have substance whatsoever, right? By definition. And I don't know, is that even a positive in this anymore? I don't know, man. Is it even a positive? Uh, I might prefer just not being ugly, right? It's like, yeah, I'm not tall. I'm just not short. Like, I kind of like that. I kind of like that. I'm not tall, but I'm not short. It's like, yeah, it's good. It's good to be just not short as a man, meaning at no point will a woman ever meet me and be like, yeah, he's short. Like, no, but then every once in a while, one's like, you're tall. And I'm like, actually, I'm not. I'm just not short. It's like, you're just looking up at me because you're really short. But actually, I'm not at all tall. I'm just not short. I'm starting to think maybe I'd be better off with yeah, I'm just not ugly. Right. Why do I have to be so damn good looking? So back to the idea, what I talked about earlier with the packaging of these ideas, the psychology of the individual is so set up for consumption of goods and services that where everybody's mind is almost always going to go when I talk about these topics is, some version of how do I consume this or how do I participate in this? Like you don't. There's nothing to consume. There's nothing to participate in, right? I'm in fact only even thinking and speaking and leveling up over time these ways because that's what I am drawn to do, right? Of my own volition. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother. I can assure you. So probably based on whatever the internal reward systems are within each individual human, there's probably nothing here for most of you, other than the dissatisfaction, right? Just how dissatisfied with life, and not their life necessarily, but just how dissatisfied with life in general most people are, but unable to express it, right? Unable to express it. And then, God forbid, they were to express it. Well, it's just going to be tallest lily syndrome or crabs in a bucket. It's just going to be like, oh, now they're just immediately going to get gaslit. It's like, well, everybody else is having a great time. What's your problem? But then, of course, Benton would be like, well, wait a minute. You're never going to be able to get me to sign off on everything's wonderful and everybody's fulfilled and happy except for me, based on how many people are taking anti-anxiety and antidepressants. So, uh, reconcile. There's not a lot of reconciliation, right? And before I started this stream, that was one of the things I wanted to talk about was the reconciliation of certain ideas. So a person doesn't understand that they can't logically operate from a space of, well, no, actually everything's wonderful. But while they themselves are dissatisfied and everybody else, again, there's always exceptions to everything. There are people who their number one choice for, if you let them pick from all available realms, some people would want to go to a delusory adversarial realm of business. Okay. So some of these people, it is their heaven on earth. Absolutely it is. There's no question about that. But that's still not a lot of people overall. But your average bozo who's, wage slaving and all of this and is deeply dissatisfied with their lives, who will be willing to engage in the tallest lily or the, crabs in a bucket. And then now they have to gaslight the person who, like me, who might be audacious enough to just state in public, hey, yeah, well, seems to me like most people are dissatisfied with this life or whatever we're calling it. And to me, I already know it's immediately going to get put back on me like, well, what's wrong with you? Because we're all having a great time. Because that can't be reconciled with the level of psych meds that Americans are on. And I'll just immediately slap them in the face with, okay, what about all these psych meds? But so it's the person not engaging in critical thinking, not properly accessing logic, and this is the general public, to not be able to understand what you're asserting can't possibly be true because I can't reconcile that with the provable reality that damn near everybody's on fucking psych meds. So so are you now going to tell me again how everybody's happy and fully contented and life is wonderful, and just I'm the one person who can't quite get out of his own way enough to figure it the fuck out, right? See that you can't, that can't ever, those things can't be reconciled. So I'll take a path of least resistance and just say, okay, well, seems to me like there's a pretty decent chance that almost everybody is experiencing high levels of dissatisfaction with their lives, right? And it's more or less normal that that's the case. More or less. That's more or less normal that that's the case. And then what is the psychological damage to the individual who subjects themselves to that day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, because they have mouths to feed, they gotta eat, and they need a place to lay their head at night. Maybe, and some of them that's a car or a van or whatever, or a homeless shelter. And so back to the idea of people wanting, people's psychology is so developed to have them consume a product. In hearing me talk about this, a lot of the attraction will be, the dissatisfaction will be a lot of the motivation, right? It's sort of, okay, how can we fill this hole? How do we fill this void? What do we do with this dissatisfaction? But then simultaneously, through the externalization, when we should internalize, and I don't, again, the royal we, when the being should internalize, what the being wants to do is externalize and say, oh, okay, well, Benton, how about you go out, you write us a book, you create a seminar, you do life coaching, and then, those of us who are affluent enough, we'll consume your products and services. And my thing would be like, well, but that's the same level of consciousness that represents the problem. If I'm asserting that the problem is that all of society is based on business, how is me turning these ideas into a business and marketing them to people? How is that going to do anything other than continue to perpetuate the issues? And also, I'm fully divorced from any notion of problem solving as far as changing this. This place can't be changed or transformed. The only question is, solipsistically, what I know myself to be can never be changed by this place. See, and antithesis via Moloch's machine is seemingly engaged, and this process of child sacrifice seems to be engaged in attempting to prove that it's possible that what I know myself to be at my core essence would somehow allow itself to manifest or be capable of manifesting in ways, even within a delusion, that could again, to a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. That's what this is. This place is the attempt via Moloch's machine for antithesis to disprove or to invalidate and to say that thesis has no authority and it has no standing. It is of no value. It's been assumed. The assertion is that what I am one with is the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit, the alpha and the omega, the source of everything. Contained within that force are all potentialities, right? So the antithesis is attempting to say, well, actually, that's not the case at all, right? And it can only do that within this delusion. Now, again, if it's solipsism, it can only do it by me never being willing to let this little light of mine shine. Now, ultimately, that's the only thing I control anyway. My only power is within my own sphere of influence, that I'm willing to, no matter what happens, I'm going to continue to properly identify within myself. Come what may, I'm committed to it. I can't serve this realm of business while being properly identified with what I am inside of myself. Now we're back to, what wouldn't Jesus do? Jesus, were he here, would not be serving corporations and making rich people richer. I'm pretty sure we can all agree to that, right? So if what I am is one with whatever Jesus was one with, right? Same motherfucking thing. If I'm able to properly identify, so let's say Jesus was a being who was able to properly identify 100% of the time in each new moment for the entirety of his life, right? And my hit rate would be much lower than that if we're going to assess the entirety of my life. But then look at how close I'm getting. My hit rate is skyrocketed of late, of in each new moment properly identifying and hitting that target. Ding, 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 ding. And then every once in a while missing it, right? And by forgetting myself, and then by not strongly identifying with what I know myself to be inside of my own sphere of influence. See? And now here's the trick. This is what Christians will consider blasphemous, and that's not my concern, and fuck them anyway. Because again, we know that tree by the fruit. Christians, we know the tree of Christianity by the fruit. Absolutely, we do. What passes for Christianity in this country? And when properly identified, I'm incapable of committing something that's known as sin. When properly identified, I can't dominate my fellow man unto my own injury. When properly identified, I can't exist in a state of fear when properly identified. I don't know what the fuck you mean when properly identified, other than what I've been taught, right? Other than what to serve business, right? And that's the source of your fears, right? Is most likely, I would say, every single thing that has to do with fear, stress, guilt, shame, anxiety, all of these negative states of being. I'd be willing to bet that 100% of that is tied to business in some way, shape, or form. And that I would blame business itself is where I would lay the blame. This system of business and whatever you want to call it. You know, how Ned Beatty's character in the 1976's movie Network, in the famous scene in the boardroom, the empty boardroom, when he was speaking to Howard Beale, I think was the guy's name. That's probably the most accurate description, I would say, of what this place, as far as from the business side of things. You know, however you want to term all of that, the system, the various systems of business. That's the source of the fear, the stress, the anxiety. Without the introduction of business, I suspect, again, you know, if I'm willing to set solipsism to the side for a moment, you know, in a thought experiment, then would it my nature be a little more like the nature of these birds out here? You know, uh, wandering into the road for their food, and you know, some of them are probably going to get run over at some point, and then they can't even conceptualize the potential calamities, right? You know, wouldn't I be more like them if not for the application of business principles to virtually every aspect of my life since I first fucking got here? It's definitely as an adult. You know, yeah, I was able to have a childhood to some extent. Well, I mean, I had a great childhood in certain ways. If you set aside the insanity of the Jehovah's Witness portion of it, and some of my parents' own insanity, but you know, the parts I had control over went quite well. Funny how that works. Almost time for apricots. Went to Walmart yesterday. They didn't have my apricots. And I almost went to a different Walmart. But I thought, you know what? This one Walmart's been having my apricots. I don't want to risk going to another Walmart. And then my Walmart didn't have the apricots. I said, damn, can you believe this? But they had my 2.5 gallon of water. They've been out of that here lately. What else do I buy? Oh, yeah, eggs, of course. I know people, I know most of you are just here for the scintillating egg talk. So, yeah. I think I'm fully on board with these Eggland's Best, the omega-3 eggs. I think overall that's the best, in my opinion, as far as what I get out of the egg yolks anyway. I was doing 18 of the extra large. I think I'm just now it's the same price for 24 of the just regular large. So I think I'm just going to do the 24 regular large. So two 12 egg yolk drinks a day. Wonderful. At least for now. Again, who knows what the future holds. I guess we'll look at some comments. Yeah. It's a skill. It's a skill, Shittle. Skill. Somebody in the chat said, "How do you talk so much to yourself?" Well, in fact, when I did my very first podcast, which was about dating and relationships, my first podcast was circa about 2011, I believe. Um, in fact, that was one of my curiosities. Was I suspected that I would be able to speak extemporaneously off the dome for extended periods of time. From an outline, though, I'm made sure to plan ahead back then. I spoke from an outline, but I found out that yeah, it's a skill. Speaking in this way is a skill, and most people don't have it, and I have it. So they also call that the gift of gab, and a lot of folks are like anti astrology, but it's right there in my astrological birth chart that I will have the gift of gab. So there's always that. And then Kentucky Stepchild is the real Kentucky Stepchild, the real MC. I like that name. Says, I think the business is life and how one moves forward. What do you mean by the business is life? See, I don't know that you know what that means, but I'm going to tell you right now, the business is life. I don't know what that means. What does that mean? I'm just going to take it as you can't tell the forest from the trees, and you actually can't. And it's just not to insult the commenters, that I don't know that you have the ability to tell the difference, right? And that's probably a big part of human psychology operating in service of Moloch's machine. All the better for Moloch's machine if you can't even tell the damn difference between your actual life and business, right? Because yeah, I mean, practically speaking, what's the fucking difference? And the fact is, I'm responsible. So if I had popped out a bunch of kids, if the missus had popped out a bunch of kids when I was 20, I would have done what everybody else does in my family and just been responsible and went out there and did whatever I had to do to raise the kids. Both my sisters managed it somehow, and which I shouldn't even say that they're both intelligent and capable people, but um, um, so I don't mean that to denigrate them. I'm just saying, like, yeah, I would have just done what all my other people do, and I would have just put my head down and just did whatever I had to do. Of course, I'm 50 now, so those kids would be on their own by now, right? Again, the Fight Club idea, to let that which does not matter truly slide. Well, it turns out that there is no matter in the first place. That matter, in fact, does not even exist, apparently, based on this idea that, well, it's actually all vibrating energy anyway, right? So to let that which does not matter truly slide, it's like that's basically everything, because it's built into humanity, that I will, you know, uh, involuntarily, I will seek to do whatever I need to do to continue breathing oxygen. At a certain point, if there was enough starvation, eventually just survival instinct would kick in so that I would eat food, right? Drink water, like, basic bodily functions, beyond the basic bodily functions, what does really matter here? Because remember, I'm judging the tree by the fruit. I'm not seeing anything redeemable about American society. And I don't mean compared to other countries. I'm just saying I live in America. I've chosen not to leave here. I'm pretty sure I'm not leaving America. At least when I leave America, I'll be leaving this whole place. Pretty sure I'm staying here for the duration. Um, so just looking at America in a vacuum, I don't see anything that I would point to and say, this is what can be held up to the rest of the world as a symbol of, this is what America's able to produce. This is what America is able to be proud of. And this is, whatever this output is something that we believe is so valuable that we would want everybody to have it. in the entire world. There's nothing. What is there? You tell me what is America producing that's worthy of holding up before the world and saying we this is our best that we have to offer. We're proud of this, and get a load of us, right? Some version of a World's Fair type shit. There's nothing. There's not anything. What are you gonna? What are you gonna name me that's not a business, a product, or a service, or a successful business or a corporation? What are you gonna point to? You got nothing. Defenders of this realm, you have nothing. Defenders of America, you don't have any. There's nothing there to defend. Again, how could there be? The realm itself is a delusion, meaning it has no substance. I'm the substance, solipsistically. There's only one source of substance in this entire place that I can 100% identify and quantify, and that's me. Now, in a thought experiment, I might be willing to entertain the notion that you folks also share in Nancy Pelosi's MS-13 spark of divinity. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, right? And that may or may not be the case. And if that's the case, it's actually kind of worse. And I don't mean this to the listener. I mean this more to the royal we, or the body of people, right? That, if all of these individuals do have that spark of divinity, they're not doing much with it. They're not doing much with it. Again, what would antithesis say? Antithesis would say, well, we know that tree by that fruit, Your Honor. Here in Devil's Advocate, legalese court of legalese, right? Uh, where is the delicious fruit other than the apricots, the canned apricots in the car? Where is the delicious fruit? The life-sustaining delicious fruit. Where is it? Because there's all these trees. There's the America, right? And then the branches of corporatism and business and politics and government. And find me one piece of fruit that ain't rotten. I just want one piece of fruit that ain't rotten. And now it almost becomes a biblical God, Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, you know where the only place I could ever possibly find unspoiled fruit? Within myself. That's it. And spiritually, again, solipsistically, I'm 100% certain that's what this is. That's what is happening. And again, it only breaks down when I try to give it to other people, and then now they get to put their own stink on these ideas, and they get to improperly apply them to the wrong context. They try to, oh, now we're going to make a team and we're going to come together and fix this. No, none of that. I'll explain to you why none of that's even possible, right? Well, what I'm saying is, if it's even possible for unspoiled fruit to be brought forth, that can only happen within me. That can't happen anywhere else. Or more correctly, when the rare times I observe it on behalf of other people, right? It's sort of like, I think it's taken for granted, this idea that everybody's basically good and society's basically good, and this idea of the fruit is mostly good, but there's a few bad apples here and there. It's like, no, every once in a while I probably come across somebody else has a perfect, delicious, life sustaining, you know metaphorical piece of fruit has fallen off of their tree, and I've they've shared it with me or whatever. Right. That's the exception. When I say there's always exceptions to everything, that's the exception, right? So again, solipsistically, again, where is my only power? Within myself. So if I want proper, nutritious, life-sustaining fruit, I better go make sure that I'm cranking it out. Because if I'm foolish enough to look to this world for it, I'm not going to find it. What I'm going to find is a bunch of people pretending like the rotten fruit is the most delicious thing they've ever tasted, they've ever laid eyes on. That's what this place is. And now it's the emperor wears no clothes, and here's Benton standing there like just holding up the rotten fruit and got a puzzled look on his face, half disgusted, going, "What are you people? What's wrong with you people?" And they're like, "What?" They're like, "What do you mean? It's delicious." Oh, well? There must be something wrong with your taste buds, Benton. There must be something wrong with you that you don't see the value. But I'm like, well, wait a minute, this is rotten. There's no substance to this. Like, I can't, if I continue eating this fruit, I can't nourish my body. I can't nourish my existence with this fruit. And I know with 100% certainty, this place will never supply me with the fruit. Guess what? I am the fruit. See, I am the tree. Yeah. So why would I pay any bit of attention to what these fools are doing? Right. Why would I pay any bit of attention to what's going on in the world? Now, again, intellectual curiosity, sure, I pay some attention to the news cycle. I'm no longer a news junkie like I used to be. Well, you don't have a we, Kentucky. See, this is what I mean. And I'm going to sound really rude to Kentucky's stepchild, the real MC. He said, if we, sir, you don't have a we, sir. So let me read the entire comment. If we were to take money out of the equation, their belief systems would change. Who's they? Who's the they? See, you're talking out of your ass here, sir. And this is definitely one of my frustrations with the general public is most of them ain't got no schooling and ain't got no learning, but then they want to be able to discourse with me as if they're on my level. Like, we're going to need you to take that back to the drawing board and maybe critique your own ideas here. Now, if you want to talk out of the context of a we and a they, it sounds like you're starting to piggyback on my idea of, have you ever asked yourself, why does this place have to be based on business? Because I've asserted, Mr. Kentucky, that the way this realm came into existence and by its very design, it has to be based on business. And this place is in fact a delusory, right? Which is an adjective, a delusory adversarial realm of business. So delusory just points you to the meaning of the word delusion. Actually, I think it points to delude. Let me look this up. Delusory, tending to delude. So delude is a verb meaning to deceive into believing something which is false, to lead into error, to dupe. And then the obsolete definition is to frustrate or disappoint. So what I'm saying is that the realm itself is delusory, meaning that it actively deceives the people who are born into it into believing everything that is false, which leads them into error, and that they are dupes, right? They are dupes. A dupe is a person who has been deceived. And make no mistake, antithesis, the elite, so called, right? The actual rich folks, you know, the realm itself, in whatever ways a realm can have a viewpoint, it all views you as a dupe. It tricked you from day one, and it cannot respect you. See, Donald Trump knows that if all he has to do is say the right things and pretend to love the poor people and the regular folks, and they'll love him back. But Donald Trump can never respect those people because he only ever knows them as people who've been duped. See, and we can't respect someone who is so easily duped. Now, I wouldn't even say easily in this case, but people double down on their own delusion, right? So now the adversarial part comes in. So there's the delusory part. I've looked up so many words. Hang on. Here's the adversarial part. So this is where when somebody like Kentucky talks about if we could get rid of money, then that could change. I think he means that would change something about how the so-called elites view the people, right? But see, Kentucky is only able to speak that way because he doesn't understand the nature of the realm itself, and which is okay because I myself didn't fully understand it until recently. But see that that doesn't account for the adversarial nature of it, or it kind of does, but in a backwards way. So we need to get to the why are we viewed as an adversary. So are you characteristic of, here's what adversarial means: characteristic of or in the manner of an adversary, combative, hostile, or opposed. And in law, it means in which issues are tried through the presentation of evidence and argument by adverse parties with no or limited inquiry by the court's own initiative. Right. Kind of sounds like that Devil's Advocate movie in a way. So the adversarial part of it is that the entire realm itself exists in opposition to what I am. Specifically, what I am is one with the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit. So the adversarial part of the realm is that the realm itself exists to oppose what I am. So by definition, this realm is adversarial to my own true nature. However, the reason it's set up that way, the why, has to do with antithesis attempting to disprove the validity of thesis. And what I am would represent thesis in this case. See, that's the key point that you're missing here. And again, it's not open for debate. For the purposes of the discussion, that's not debatable. If somebody wants to debate that somewhere else, that's fine. I won't be there. And I don't need anybody else to sign off on this because, again, solipsistically, I know what I'm saying here to be true within myself, right? Within my own sphere of influence. So, in fact, it has nothing to do with me and my experiences if other people agree. And in fact, that's an error in thinking where people somehow, the idea of consensus, if enough people sign off on, well, actually Benton isn't right here. The idea that, well, if enough people are willing to agree that I'm wrong, well, that doesn't make me wrong. I'm either wrong, I'm either correct or I'm incorrect here. Right. To varying degrees. I know I'm correct. I'm 100% certain. Now, part of how I'm 100% certain is that what I am at my core essence is not capable of error in these matters. Think about that. What I am is so badass and powerful and all of these things that an entire fucking delusory adversarial realm of business has been set up to um to offer me the opportunity in each new delusive moment, right? The idea that time and space could ever possibly exist, to delusively uh, uh, offer me the opportunity to curse my own blessing. That's what this place is. That's the only way that antithesis is ever able to stake its claim legally in court that will this most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit. It actually turns out it ain't shit after all. Right. That's what you were born into if you are what I am. See, solipsistically, it's enough for me to say, well, that's what I have been born into. And even if somebody else could say, well, actually, look at silly little Benton out here. He's suffering from these delusions he keeps talking about. Yeah, that's a viewpoint. It's not a viewpoint that I share. I don't share that viewpoint. And as long as I can stay out of the mental institutions and stay out of prison, I have every right to live the rest of my life based on these ideas, even if they do turn out to be false. But they're not false because I know them to be true. And the fact is, direct experience is evidence. Okay. It's just not necessarily evidence that I can remove from myself and give to you. You would be taking my word for it in some way. Right. Oh, what's up, Five Speed? Yeah. Sorry if I'm getting cantankerous with you. Anybody that comes around here much knows that I get cantankerous with pretty much everybody at some point. So please forgive me, sir. If you've been coming back this long, I'm sure you're forgiving enough. But and part of my own getting this far in my thinking, some of that is probably based on the fact that I do over time I've been able to become quite annoyed solely based on ideas themselves. So this is probably somewhat normal for me what I'm doing here. But see, I'll come on here and talk for 3 hours and forget myself. It's like, wait a minute, I need to drink water. I need to eat some apricot, right? I need to go to the bathroom on occasion. So when the person asked, how can you talk so much? Well, I mean, I'm better than you in that way. That's how, it's a superiority, sir. But, while recognizing that, most people are going to have skills and talents and abilities, and they will be, superior to me in that way, right? But yeah, it's a superiority, and that's okay. I understand we're in a society where it's not considered okay to just declare oneself superior, but yeah, it's a superiority. Humanity, humanity. Anyway, hopefully I didn't turn Five Speed off too much. That was not my intention, sir. But as I've said often myself, though, intention, in my intention to not offend, what's that have to do with, if I in fact behave in ways that offend people? Well, it wasn't my intention to offend you, but yeah, well, you did. But anyway, thanks for listening, Mr. Five Speed. Appreciate you sticking it out with somebody like me for so long. It's been a minute. And I do kind of enjoy getting annoyed at the chatters from time to time. make a bit of sport of the chat, right? And all of this progress, mind, body, and spirit, it certainly, it certainly puts that idea to the test that I've talked about. If a thing is worth doing, it's worth doing of its own merits, because not only am I not rewarded by this realm based on my current level of understanding and comprehension and ability to apprehend a lot of these aspects of reality. Um, it's quite the opposite much of the time, or it can be, rather. It can seem like more of a punishment. But anyway, I guess I'm going to get out of here, go use the restroom, and have some apricots. Thanks for watching. Bye.